All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everybody who's calling in. Welcome to the Ambassador Call for the Charter for Compassion International Women and Girls Sector. I'm really honored today, especially on this call, it's one of our special calls. We offer special coaching to our ambassadors who are real leaders of this sector. We do have a leadership task force and a leadership advisory council, and we are constantly in leadership mode here in the work that we are doing until it gets to our ambassador program, and then we listen deeply and take instruction from our ambassadors, who are the boots on the ground, if you will. It's you who knows what's going on in the community. It's you who are bring the unique confluence of diversity to the work that we do, because it requires everyone's input here. In the spirit of feminine leadership, I thank you. This coaching is an opportunity to give back to you. You give so much to us. This is what we give back to you. And it became evident after our first couple of coaching calls that we can't keep this to ourselves. That we want everybody in the world to be an ambassador, and to hear this information, and to, just to take this information and be as empowered and with all the tools and skills that you can possibly have. So today is one of those coaching calls. And so it's really an honor to welcome Wendy Silvers, who I've known for quite a long time. And I've always respected and honored her. So when we started thinking about coaching calls, I knew Wendy had to fit in here somewhere. And here she is. So welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Sandy.
Wendy's a mindful mothering empowerment coach. She's a nonviolent parenting educator. She's an author, a sacred activist, and the founder of the Charter for Compassion Partners, Million Mamas Movement. So she's a fellow partner as well. And Wendy also does private coaching too, and perhaps maybe touch on that a little bit at the end of our call, so people can really get to know how to connect with you after this call, because I really hope that y'all take advantage of the gifts that Wendy brings, and what that impact would be on your heart. So today, as you all know, our topic is really in honor of the United International Day of the Girl Child, which is why we saved Wendy for this particular time and space. And it's about empowering our children in these turbulent times. We know our children are listening. So I'm just here to tell you, before I stop talking and introduce Wendy and give her the floor, that while my children are grown and, long gone, I mean, they're not long gone, you know what I mean? My children don't need me to mother them. Now they've got an awful lot to teach me, which they always have. So I know that I'm here to learn about myself. And when she's talking about children, I know she's talking about me too. So, yeah, thank you, Wendy, and it's really an honor to welcome you.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate today, and thank you so much for the Charter of Compassion and the Charter of Compassion Women and Girls. And yes, I am all those things that you mentioned, and I'm also an Agape licensed spiritual therapist and spiritual teacher. And so I like to begin everything that I do with just taking a moment or two in the silence. And I want to just check, how's the audio and video? Because it's looking like I'm not synced up. Is it just on my end?
You look pretty good and synchronized. I think.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I was hoping you would start us with that centering. I assume you might.
Yes, please. So I just, unless you're driving, don't do this. But if you're stationary, just take a moment and close your outer eye. And simply bring your awareness to your heart. And I want you to we're going to do 3 deep breaths. So just breathing in through your nose, all the way up into your head, and exhale with and then taking another breath, and feel it getting deeper with each breath. Holding it a little bit at the top, and exhale. And now imagine that you are breathing straight through the root of Mother Earth, the core of Mother Earth, all the way into your body, all the way up, 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 up to the top, and hold it at the top. And sip in some more air like you're sipping through a straw, and hold it for a few seconds. And exhale with a, and just become present to the sensations in your body, to the way you are being breathed. Become aware of your heartbeat. And just allow yourself to follow your breath. Allow the exhalation to follow the inhalation. Simply resting in the breath. And simply setting the intention for this time to be a heart-centered, soul-centered, uplifting, up-leveling, transformative, liberating, inspiring dialogue. I'm so grateful for this time together. I'm so grateful for each and every person who shows up. I'm so grateful to the Charter of Compassion, to the Charter of Compassion for Women and Girls, to celebrating the girl child, the boy child, every child, to Sandy Hart, and to each and every person who shows up as a parent, as a steward, as a mentor to these beloved children. And so it is. And so someone is unmuted and perhaps shuffling. So if you, oh, perfect. Okay, so that is, my friends, the first step. I have what I call the gifts of serenity, strategies of serenity. For empowering our children in these turbulent times, we must first calm ourselves. So the first step in this is centering and grounding. In my work as a parenting educator, I do a whole module on brain science and brain development. And the reason that I talk about this is that there is what I call brain dysregulation, could be called flooded, could be called triggered. And so if you look at your hand, if you take your right hand, or for the sake of this exercise, this, and you just hold it straight up, this part of your arm is the reptilian part of your brain, right? Your brain, it's basically, there's 3 areas of the brain, even though there are more, that are pretty active all the time. So it's the reptilian, and in the center is the limbic, and here's the little amygdala, which is all the emotions, and this is the neocortex, or the frontal lobes of the brain. We're living in a time where most everybody is having their amygdala, they're flipping their lid, and the amygdala, the center of the emotional center, is on high alert almost all the time. So what's really important, if you're going to empower anyone, is that you center and ground your brain so that you're able to access your heart wisdom. The heart is called actually the first brain. In a fetus, the heart is the first organ that develops. So there's more wisdom and more neurons in your heart than there are in your brain. So what's really important is, and you can use this, if you can, I hope you can see this, it's just your hand, it's your arm, it's your palm, and it's your fingers. And so this is the reptilian, this is the limbic, with your thumb is the amygdala, and this is the neocortex. When you flip your lid, so the neocortex is out of regulation, or you're flooded the emotion, you want to find ways to bring the neocortex back. So for each person, I've developed a kit called Strategies of Serenity. And for each person, it's really important to find out what those are for you. So here's a couple of examples. You could blow bubbles. You could blow into a straw. For some people, it's chewing gum. I highly recommend getting onto the earth, because Mama Earth has so much energy and aliveness that it grounds and it centers. I have advised parents of children under the age of 3, if they are able to actually get horizontal, to lay on the ground and to feel along the spinal column and the back of your head that you are firmly and gently supported, because it allows you to relax. So we are posed at this time in the world, in this history, with an enormous amount of dysfunction, politically, emotionally, educationally, medically. There's just the earth changes that are happening. I'm in unceasing prayer for all the different areas of the world that have been ravaged by earth changes, and some of them are actually man-initiated earth changes. And so, what do? How do we navigate these times? How do we make sure that we can be a beneficial presence on the planet so that we can support others? So it begins with us. Gandhi said, let there be change, and let it begin with me. And so that's why I'm going to talk about some tools for you. And then I'll go into some tools for empowering our children. So centering and grounding is really important. Being around people, places, and things that uplift, that allow you to stay in an elevated awareness, so that when you are moved to take action in whatever arena you feel called, you are coming from an inspired place and not a reactionary place. The time in this world is what I call awakened activism. It is a person who has a practice of either contemplation, meditation, reflection, that allows one to access the heart wisdom and the soul wisdom. A tool that I use with my clients is called visioning. I learned it from my mentor, Michael Beckwith, and it's not visualization. It's visioning. And what I do is I take people through a series of questions while in a meditative space to access the intuitive faculty that connects us to universal wisdom. I made a commitment years ago to live a life that is soul and heart-centered, not ego-driven. Even though I will tell you that I have discovered that I was doing things in certain places in my life that were ego-driven, and I'm grateful for the lessons, though they're not very comfortable, to have that wisdom to go back to what my intention is. And so visioning is a very powerful tool to access your heart soul wisdom for your life. I use it for people that are planning businesses, a project, a relationship, anything that they're doing. It is a really powerful way to access an intuitive direction. When you couple your heart soul wisdom with centering, with clarity, I call it crystal clear clarity. When you are able to have crystal clear clarity, then you are a change agent who is moving from inspired action. The 60s were really powerful. They brought so much to our awareness. And now in 2017, we need to anchor it with heart soul wisdom, because we are watching structures just crumble and fall. We are watching people implode and explode. They're archetypes. It's an archetype, because that which no longer serves us is falling away. It's just not going out with a whimper. It's going out with a bang. In order to be able to navigate the bang, it requires centering and grounding, being around those people, places, and things that uplift, having a crystal clear clarity direction for your life, taking actions that are heartening and life affirming is the way to affect change. and continuing to do your own inner work. As the human condition is, sometimes there's blind spots, and we don't see that the very thing we're telling people not to do, we're actually doing ourselves. So in being able to be an empowered, awakened activist, it requires us doing our own inner work, getting nitty gritty, getting into the places, and recognizing that it's a continual growth opportunity journey. When you have established that as your ground point, and also being educated about what it is you're taking action in. And so that really helps as well. And then I can get into the activism in terms of going to legislators, but I want to just pause for a second and see, does anybody have any questions about what I've shared first?
Namrata, hi Betsy, Namrata is muted. But wow, I think this is a sign that you're as crystal clear as possible.
Okay, great.
Very
Okay.
thorough. I think we all want to know more and more and more.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll pause from time to time to just check in so that everybody has an opportunity to really ask, inquire, and embody. Because what we really need as awakened activists is we need the embodiment. So many times there's theory, and we're very well-meaning, and it's got to be embodied. We talk about compassion, and I have come to believe that compassion is the ability to see somebody else's point of view, even when we don't agree with it, especially when we don't agree with it. That to me is compassion. Empathy is the ability to be present with somebody else's pain, suffering, discomfort, without trying to change them, change it, or feel their feelings. There's a saying sometimes, I feel you, I feel you. And my amendment is, I got you, I get you. It's not healthy to feel anybody else's feelings. I know it's a full-time job for me to feel my own. And when I work with clients, I really talk to them about emotional intelligence and emotional literacy. And I really do implore people to feel their own feelings, to get conscious around what they're feeling. Because so many times as people have come up, they haven't been enculturated to name the feelings that they're having. You know, so we have mad, sad, glad, angry. But there's a whole depth and range of feelings that are underneath it that we want to be able to name, like feeling sad or feeling enthusiastic or feeling joyous or feeling grief. Our society is not comfortable with grief for the most part. There are those little pockets, but there's like an assigned time. You can grieve for this long. And after that, what's wrong with you? Come on, get over it. And so emotional literacy is really important. So I'm going to jump now, and then I'll weave back to how do you empower your child? So first of all, how old is the child that's in front of you? The reason that I talk about this goes back to the brain science and the brain chemistry. Children are at different levels of awareness. They are at different emotional levels. I have a child who, when she was younger, she was so mature. And she is, to this day, the most favorite person that I want to spend time with. And I spent an enormous amount of time with her. And I remember precisely having this experience when she was around 2. We had this amazing day. We spent time together. It was just great, really aligned. And then she did something. And I remember I had this reaction and I thought, what? Why is she doing that? And they went, oh my God, she's 2. And what happens is that in our society, there's different paradigms. We live in a predominantly dominant paradigm, patriarchal paradigm, power over paradigm. It is rife in every part of our society, every area. And so what I teach is compassionate, connected, nonviolent paradigm of relationship. And I have focused on the parent-child relationship because I believe that most people are recovering from their childhoods in one way or another. And so, or they're reparenting themselves, right? Both and. So when you know how old the child is in front of you, you're able to support them. I use this metaphor. When the child is in front of you, depending on how old they are, depending on their emotional vocabulary, depending on their own emotional literacy, we do not want to give them a suitcase that is too heavy to carry. And so adults do what I call adultify. If a child is in front of you and they're very mature and they're 7, one might assume that they can handle a lot of information. So I invite adults to pause and see if you're handing them a suitcase that's too heavy for them to carry. What's the information that's imparting? Like, for instance, when kids want to learn about sex, they're not, and they're under the age of 6, where a lot of curiosity comes about their body parts and other people's body parts and where do babies come from. Sometimes parents are really freaked out, like, what do they do? What do they say? Short and sweet. They're not really that interested in all the details. So not really interested in, all the nitty gritty. They just want to have an understanding. So it's like, keep it simple, sweetheart. Keep it simple. And when you're talking to a child about the violence in the world, remember how old they are. Remember that our first job as stewards of these children is to let them know that we will do everything in our power to make sure that their bodies are safe. Because number one, we want to comfort them and let them know that they are not alone. Just like as adults, when we're moving through trying times, it really helps to know that we're not alone, that we're not on this journey by ourselves, that we're not just left out in the wind like a leaf to blow, that there's somebody that's saying, I have you, I'm holding you. So that's what we want to impart to our children. And then we want to talk about what I have said to my daughter since she was little, is that some people are very, very separate from the fact that love is their true nature. They're separate from the love in their heart, and they're in a lot of pain. And because they are hurting, they hurt other people to make that pain go away. It doesn't last, but that's what they do. So that's one of the tips that I share with you. And the other is body wisdom. From the time a child is little, invite them to check into their body around the solar plexus area when they meet somebody or they hear something. Ask them, so how does that feel? How do you feel about that? How does your body feel? You want to cultivate body wisdom, because your body, I'm also a hypnotherapist, and I've been practicing since 1992. And what I've learned and what I've seen is that emotions can get coagulated. They get stuck, just like thought forms is basically energy that gets coagulated. So you want to make sure that your kids have body awareness, so that when they walk into a room, or they're walking down a street, or they meet somebody who appears or presents like they're totally great, they can trust their body wisdom. It connects them to their intuitive wisdom. And we want our kids, especially at this time, to be very aware and connected to their wisdom, their inner wisdom. Too many people are praying at the screen. They're praying to the gods and the demigods of this little thing. And so we really want to invite them to get very clear about what's right for them, so that when they're with their friends and somebody's doing something that isn't okay, they have the confidence to say, no, not me, thanks, I'm not going to do that. They will do that when you support them. So the next tip is, don't deny another's heritage. As I look at the pictures on this, we're all Caucasian. So I'm in a mixed marriage, and I have a child who's mixed heritage, and she's rather light-skinned. And so I have, from the time she was little, encouraged her to embrace the totality of her being. So what people do that are compassionate and are that are Caucasian and part of mixed communities is they'll often say, I don't see color, I just see people. And that is dismissing another person's heritage, because the hues of the skin are different. And there's a different heritage. There's a different enculturation for people of color. And I'm not only talking about Black and brown, I'm talking about Asian, and I'm talking about our First Peoples. There's a different experience of life. So to just whitewash something and say, I don't see color, I just see people. Yes, our souls have no color, but we are light beings. And we do have auras for those that believe in them, and there are different colors. They are different colors. We don't look at somebody's aura and say, oh, I don't see color. So you don't want to deny another person's heritage. You do want to say, so I believe in oneness. Oneness is not sameness. We all come into the world, different hues, different opportunities, different awarenesses, and we honor that. We honor everybody at the depth of their being. And so again, with your children, you want to invite them to honor other people's heritages. And I want to tell you, children notice the different color of skin, but they don't have judgment. They just notice the skin color is different. Children don't come into the world bigots and racists. It's learned behavior. They don't come in hating other people. It's learned. And we, the adults, are our child's and children's first teachers. We are our children's first teachers. We are their stewards. We do not own them. From the first time I ever did a workshop in 2004 at the Agape International Spiritual Center, I said that children are our spiritual teachers. The opportunity to grow with our children, whether you're a mentor, whether you're a parent, whether you're an auntie and uncle, we grow, hopefully, hopefully the invitation as in this role is that we grow as our children grow. We live in an ever-evolving universe, so why not grow with our children? One thing that I have said to my daughter from the time she was little is that I'm growing with you. I'm not perfect. I'm doing, and I will continue to do the very best that I possibly can. I will make mistakes. I'm growing with you, and we're going to get through this together. That allows your child, and even your teenager, my daughter's going to be 17. I talk to my daughter about anything, and she knows that she can come to me. I have always wanted to be, I the TMI parent, too much information. I've always wanted to have that kind of relationship where I could go to my husband or go to somebody else and say, can I have some listening time? Because I'm really full with, what I just heard. But I wanted to be that place so that my child would feel empowered, because that's another way to empower your child in turbulent times. Several months ago, our child texted us and was really concerned because there was the threat of the bomb. And she said, are we gonna die? And it was a very scary inquiry. And as a parent, our desire is to always make sure that our children are safe. And living in these times, we are presented with, how do we keep our children safe? What can we do? So my husband and I responded in as genuine and as authentic a place that we could. And we said, no, I don't believe that you're going to die. And I repeated what I shared with you at the top of the call. We're going to do everything we can to keep you safe. And we're here for you. And that is what helps to mitigate the fear that is being fed through mainstream media, through all of the incidences that are happening. There's free-floating anxiety. That's actually in the DSM. Free-floating anxiety is a quote-unquote disorder or an experience. So I want to let you know, if you're having free-floating fear, you're not crazy. You're being fed it. That's another tool that I want to share with you. Another strategy is turn off media as much as you can. If you want to check in and see what's happening, do that, but then turn it off. And again, at home, don't have the TV, don't have Crisis News Network going on a continual loop with the pictures and the images and the intense voiceovers. They learn everything on social media, but you want to really dial it down. And especially for the younger ones, you want to dial down the news, dial down social media. And again, this is Mochi. He likes to be wherever the action is. Just like kids, they like to be wherever the action is. But it's our job as adults to bring our adult parts of ourselves present to be there for our children. The next strategy is don't deny another's experience, perception, or feelings. Don't deny another's experience, perception, or feelings. I do my very best to speak from the I whenever I'm in conversation. And even when I am triggered, I do my best, because I can only share what my perception is, what my experience is, and what my feelings are. I really don't know, even though I do engage empathy, I really don't know exactly what you're feeling, because we might say we're having the same feelings, but it feels different to me than it does to you. So when you are in a situation and you're empowering yourself and your child, don't deny, don't dismiss, don't say, oh, it's not that bad, or it's, you're not really feeling that, or that's not the way it is. Really do what I call reflective listening. Oh, wow. It sounds like I'm wondering if you're feeling blank because I'm hearing blank. Is that accurate? That's a whole different engagement. Oh, I see another dog. That's a whole different engagement with someone than dismissing what they're feeling, denying what they're telling you. When your child comes to you and says, I'm feeling scared, the reflex, because parents want to make sure that their kids are okay, is to say, oh no, it's okay. Or don't be scared, but they're telling you that they are. So, or if your friend comes to you and says, I'm really feeling nervous about XYZ, reflect that back. I hear you feeling nervous. I'm wondering what's going on. How can I help? And it's not sterile, and it's not disengaged. It's about, I believe that everybody has wisdom within them to find solution. So I get to do what I call hold the container. I hold the container. I hear you. I'm here for you. Sounds like you're having a hard time. Sounds like you're having a great time. Sounds like you feel really good about what happened. That's wonderful. Or how can I help? As an empath, as an intuitive, as a spiritual teacher counselor, as a mom, my desire is to help others find joy and peace and fulfillment, and to really be uplifted. But it's not my job to fix. It's not my job to coerce. It's not my job to convince. I can only lay at your feet, at anyone's feet, tools and strategies to empower and uplift your life. I'm not responsible, even though I used to feel very, very responsible for another person's experience. I'm not in anybody else's body. And I know that people are very scared, and they're really feeling hopeless, a lot of people. I've gotten calls from my clients, and they've expressed this sense of hopelessness about the world. And I get it. I get it. There's a lot happening that feels really hopeless. It feels like, where do we go from here? And so I have to draw upon everything that I know and everything that I'm sharing with you so that I can help somebody find solution, find peace, find a way inside of themselves to have joy in spite and despite of the headlines. We're living in a time of mass distraction. It's really, the WMD is weapons of mass distraction. So the more that a person can come home to themselves, the more that a person can come home to their heart and their heart wisdom, the more they are, the more you are a beneficial presence on the planet. As I said, I have this term, awakened activism, drop in because I teach a program called The Awakened Mother, and I wrote an ebook called 5 Pathways to the Awakened Heart. And I believe that in our world, this is a process of awakening. There are many people awakening because there's so many different structures in life that are being impacted. So it's an invitation. There's a knocking on our hearts and souls. What are we here for? What is ours to do? The answer to that can only come from getting quiet, from taking walks in nature, from being by the ocean, having your journal nearby, doing dancing. So I'm very kinesthetic, so it's really healthy for me to move. And then sometimes in the shower, I'll get downloads. A lot of times I'll be in the shower and I'll just like, shh. And that's another thing I want to share with you. So for those on the call that are highly sensitive, that you can, I remember when I lived in Manhattan, I'm from New York, and I've been on a spiritual path since I'm 8. And so when I was in New York and I was in my 20s, 30s, and I would walk out of my house and I would get on the subway to go somewhere, and I'd arrive and I would feel horrible. I don't know what happened. And what I didn't know is how to protect myself, how to keep myself, my aura, for lack of a better word, or the environment around my body pristine, to keep it clean. So what I want to invite you to do, or have some strategies. And again, I go more into this in the classes that I teach, but I want you to imagine dousing yourself in golden white light from the top of your head straight down, literally, if you have the time, to see it cascading down your body, your neck, your shoulders, your arms, out through your fingertips, again, coming in your head and going straight down your torso, your pelvic area, your legs, your feet, into Mother Earth to ground you. And when you're going into a situation where you feel anxious or nervous, bring this light with you and move into your heart and send love before you. Okay, I'm going to take a breath and invite you to take a breath. I'm going to pause. Are there any questions? Anybody want to ask anything? I've imparted a lot, so I want to pause and just harvest anything.
Yeah, I certainly want to hear any questions and comments, and I'd like to start if I could. I want to first thank you. You're right. I have so much to process. I took copious notes. And one of the things that was so striking to me, and actually one of our last coaching calls was with Brenda Gustin, and Brenda spoke to us about cellular intelligence. And, you know, you touched on that every cell in our body, you know, is, you didn't say these words, but reminded us that all of our cells have intelligence. And for me, that is basically being mindful. And I always spell that when I'm writing that out, MIND-FULL. But what you did touch on, and this is something, the purpose of our reaction to response initiative. You know, after the events of 11/9, we say after the election, there was an awful lot of reactionary impulse that was unhealthy and fear-based and disempowering and what have you. And we felt our responsibility as a sector was to bring in the concept of timefulness, being timeful. And that's the space between reaction and response. And this is something you've given us some absolute, you know, tools, like really concrete, really clear, simple to follow directions on how to step. I mean, it's easy to conceptualize the idea of being responsive over reactionary, but you've actually given us those actual tools. So for that, I'm very, very excited. And I hope to hear from Donna on this call too, because you touched on something that she and I are both very passionate about, and that is the work of domination over partnership. And partnership, I should say, let's be positive, partnership over domination. So I really those are a few things that just are shining brightly for me right now. And I wanted to thank you. And I'm going to stop talking to give room for others to talk while we've got time together. And by the way, Namrata, there's Donna, and Namrata is calling from India. So
welcome.
Yeah, so I know she's muted, and I don't know why. But hi, Donna. It's nice to see your face. Now she's off of her phone.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, and I just have to tell you that you speak my language. Everything that you have said is everything that I tell my clients. And so what has been really delightful about it is that it makes you feel like, oh, there's the pup. There's the mochi. Yeah. It just makes me feel like I'm not alone anymore. And not that I'm not only not alone, but that there's more and more people. And so when I encounter people, like I surround myself with people like you and all the rest of the people that are on the call. And when I meet people that say, Donna, it's just not that way. You know, it's just not that way. And I say, yeah, actually it is, because my life is full of these people and I don't know who you're hanging out with, but maybe you should come and have tea at my place, or, you know, what have you. But it's got to the point where I have surrounded myself with so many beautiful people like yourself and using the same language that I'm almost shocked when I meet people who are engaging in this us versus them and in the continuum of separatism and, you know, that we have in this country and in the rest of the world. So thank you.
My pleasure. It's so great to meet you. You're in India, you said?
No, I'm not in India. I'm in Idaho temporarily, but 10 years temporarily, but I am planning on going overseas out of this country. So Namrata is in India.
Oh, Namrata. Okay.
Yeah,
And you know, we really are we are really seeing an emergence of a new culture emerging of this vibration of being how we are together. The language we use, it's our narrative, it's how we view the world, it's, you know, who we choose to surround ourselves with. So
yes, absolutely. And what I want to say is we're talking about a tipping point. So when I hear what you just shared, and thank you, I'm so happy to meet you. What we're talking about is a collective agreement, because though people are up in arms, and we're up in arms about who was elected or who became the president, there was a collective agreement for that to happen, or it would not have happened. And when we talk, I mean, I don't know how esoteric or how deep I can dive into that aspect, but you have to let me know, Sandy, but I don't believe that anything happens by accident. There's no accidents in this world. It looks like it and it seems like it, but actually there is a divine order. And the tricky part is having our feelings, processing our feelings, and being held to have a different viewpoint. Perhaps you want to call it a divine viewpoint at what's happening, or a universal viewpoint. So we are at a tipping point in this world right now. And we, those of us that are catching this vibratory frequency, we are the harbingers of the new world. That's why we're here. And that doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's comfortable, because it sure as hell isn't, except we agreed to this. So we're here, and all it takes is a number of us to hold this vibration. And I want to invite everybody. I've had this vision of all of us getting together and spreading. All we need are 8,000 people around the world holding a meditative vibrational frequency of peace and well-being. And so I'm inviting you, Sandy, and all of the charter partners to, I'll send out information. I would like us to do this once a month so that we hold this space, because what I know is that we live in a vibrational universe, and the universe responds by corresponding to the energy that we emit. So words have energy, thoughts have energy. And when we are in alignment, it doesn't have to be everybody in the entire world. But I remember hearing Greg Braden talk about this, that there was an experiment in, I believe, the early 80s. And the monks got together in different locations around the world. And they held a vibrational space holder of peace. And when they did that, violence dropped and it stayed down. So I want to invite everybody to join me in doing this once a month, because we can shift this. There are structures that are going to fall apart. I mean, we're seeing these earth changes, and it's the result of man's disregard for nature, man's disregard for each other, and the fact that things are happening. So, so thank you for what you said.
It, except that's the separateness. Our disregard is our separateness, right?
Yes, the divisiveness and the separation is what I believe is part of the agenda of this administration. It goes beyond, of course, but that's what's being fed. If we can separate people, if we can have everybody on different sides rather than one side. I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but there's really only one race, and it's the human race. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we're in human form. But in keeping with one of the strategies to empower our children and ourselves, we don't deny another's heritage. We don't deny that there's people with different, beautiful, beautiful different hues of skin. We don't deny that. We recognize that we're humans and that we're here to help each other. We're here together. We weren't just dropped into this dimension and been like, okay, you're here, have at it. But we do have free will and free choice. And what will we choose? It's always a choice. Whatever we do impacts this generation and the next 7 generations. But we also, by our choices and by our actions, we get to clear the line ancestrally and forward.
Now you're speaking my language.
Even more so. I knew you girls would be best friends. I think everyone's angels are high-fiving each other right now.
Yeah.
Right.
One common thing that's...
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Oh, who was I'm talking over? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Oh, this is all. I'll just make this very, very quick. And I'm looking at the time, so I'm hoping we have an agreement to go on a little bit longer, perhaps, and come to some, I feel like we could be on this call until 4 o'clock this afternoon. But one of the common themes I was seeing going through all of this that was coming up a lot for me was being vulnerable. And Wendy, you brought me to my knees when you said, when you made the agreement when your daughter was young, that you were going to raise her with her knowing that she's growing, you're growing with her.
Yeah.
And I think for me that, if, you know, as a parent, you always look back and say, oh, I wish I did it this way or that way. For me, foundationally, I think this is one thing I can say. I really wish I knew this tool back then, because I played firm, I played strong. I was looking at a model or a number of models that, you know, always had the answers. And I felt that, you know, you got to be a rock in your child's life. You've got to be the pillar of strength and direction, and show them what respect looks like by demanding it, basically. Boy, what a disservice I've done. And I sort of have been apologizing to my kids since their young adulthood, but I never really put it this way, and I never heard it this way before. So I want to thank, and for me, you have this time, and a lot of the peacemakers and compassion people who where you said that this is tough work. You know, my common statement these days is compassion is painstaking. It's often the most hardest thing that we could be doing. See the need for suffering and have the courage, not just the willingness, but the courage to step out of your comfort and be a part of their healing, which is part of your healing, because that's a whole nother conversation about, yeah. But you said it yourself also, Wendy, is that if you can see something in someone else, I think you said this earlier, that it means it exists in you. Absolutely.
Right? Well, that's the biggest misconception in the whole separate divisiveness, is that the old paradigm, and it's not a prosperous paradigm or an empowering paradigm, is, as was mentioned, it's us or them, and there's always that finger pointing. But what people don't see is that there's 3 pointing back toward them, but there's always you, or they. But we're all connected. There's the worst in the best of us, and some of the best in the worst of us. And so it's about, you know, what's the perspective again, and how are we viewing this? And Sandy, thank you for your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing so honestly about your experience with parenting. And that's what I love about the series that I teach, is that I've had parents that are in their 50s come to this class and say, I've healed my own issues with being parented and parenting my children. And so it's really that opportunity to reflect and to reshape, because that's part of the growing and unfolding. We're not static. The journey is the destination. There's no destination. Even when we cross over from everything that I've learned, we're still learning. We're still growing. We're just not in these human bodysuits.
Right. So sort of moving on a little bit here, I wanted to share with you that our November Reaction to Response series is going to be addressing the role that women play in and we decided to recalibrate next month's theme because of what's going on in the media. Namrata, I don't know if you're aware of what's happening here, and I think it's just happening everywhere, is that there's been an awful lot of mask removal of people in power abusing their power and being called to the mat and paying consequences. In one of the particular cases, it's what's happening in Hollywood with a very famous movie producer. And it's really bringing down, an awful lot around us. A lot is breaking open right now, and a lot of people are being called into that courage that I mentioned. And the role that women play in maintaining this fierce commitment to revealing truth, because right now, especially at this time, how required it is that we show up in our divine grace and stand firm in what is right. And that takes vulnerability too, because you have to look at yourself and make sure that you're also not an offender. So in that call, I don't know, I think I might have gotten some inspiration here from you, Wendy. I know I have, but regarding that series and really what can those conversations evolve? But that's where we are right now. And I want to thank you so much, Wendy, for I feel like there's so much more to say. Let me just stop here and see if there's anybody, especially the callers on the phone.